Ruslan.
How do you find healing and cope with church, with hurt from church people? That's a good question. I come from a background where I've been hurt from church people in the beginning, from the jump, early on. Church people hurt me. So I think I just developed tough skin, meaning that when I came to Jesus, we started a ministry called The Vessel of Hip Hop. I know it sounds cringy now, but it was actually really dope in hindsight. The Vessel of Hip Hop was an open mic where folks would come in, battle rap, freestyle, and then we do a Bible study, and I would buy everybody pizza. It was actually rather fly. And 7 months into this ministry, we outgrew the youth ministry. We didn't have a youth pastor at the time, and it was a lot of folks that weren't from church that were coming to this ministry called The Vessel of Hip Hop. And it was dope. And my wife actually came. A lot of folks from the area came. So I was at this church, and I'm not gonna name the name of the church. I guess a mega church out here, cool church. And what happened was the senior pastor didn't know that we were doing this ministry. We were bringing non-Christian kids together, and there was, freestyling happening, all these different things, right? When he found out, without giving us a time to meet for our final gathering, without giving us any warning, I think he found out on like a Monday, and like we got a call Tuesday, like, yeah, guys, we got to shut the ministry down. And I was like, wait, what? Could we meet one last time? And they were like, no. And literally, the ministry was Thursday. So we were meeting on, mind you, I'm 17. I've been walking with Jesus maybe 6 months or a year at this point. Boom, it doesn't fit our vision, the vision of our church. It doesn't fit the vision of our church, is what he said. Like, we're reaching people far from God. Like, we're literally reaching people that would never step foot in a church. They're coming because there's music and there's art and there's a DJ and there's free pizza. And then I'm leading a Bible study and I'm teaching people. Boom, nope. That initial reaction early on just showed me that I am going to experience church hurt as some people. Like, people are jacked up. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to, do goofy stuff, man. And that was early on in the process for me. And I'm actually kind of grateful that it happened early in the process because I had older men around me that kind of braced me for it. Boom, so that happened. Prayerfully, I didn't know, but the church that I'm at now was praying that this ministry, which was at a different church, would be transferred to the church I'm at now. So I find this out on like a Monday. They tell us Tuesday we can't even meet. Wednesday, I'm meeting with the new pastor. Following Thursday, we had a new building, had new sound, a place to meet, and it was a city over, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And we were able to maintain it and grow it. We were able to maintain it and grow the ministry. And so the ministry grew, went from like 80 on a Thursday. I think we changed nights. Long story short, the ministry, in its peak was getting, 150 people on a Saturday night. We changed nights. They let us do it right after the Saturday night service. And a lot of people heard about Jesus. A lot of people came to faith because of that ministry. And it was a really, really cool time. And then we went on to throw concerts because of that ministry, and thousands of people. And it was really cool. And so God transferred it, and people were praying that it would transfer way before we even had the thought to transfer it. And I didn't even want to change churches. I liked the church I was at the time. Long story short, the church I was at, I got on staff at that church, and I was there for 2 years. And towards the end of that 2 years, my music started taking off. That created tension in my responsibilities, and I had to transition off of staff. I maintained the relationships, but it wasn't the cleanest transition. I kind of felt pushed out in a way, but it was just time. It was time to go. So there was some hurt there with the way that handled, but I stuck around. I'm a commitment guy. If I'm committed to you, I'm committed to you. And like a year or two after leaving staff, I was on tour. We found out that the head pastor made some unethical, borderline illegal decisions with the finances. And that was a big hit. The head pastor got confronted by the elders and was forced to step down. So what do you do with that? You're on staff at a church, you find out the finances aren't necessarily on the up and up. Yuck is right. And it was a mess. It was a big mess. Thankfully, God preserved me in that. And I wasn't on staff, because if I wasn't on staff, I would have been splat in the middle of all that drama, having to pick sides and all that kind of stuff. I was on tour, minding my own business. Then this whole thing comes out, and pastor has to step off staff, admit in front of the entire church that he did some things that weren't the most ethical with the finances, and that was a big mess. And then they didn't think the church was going to survive. Thankfully, it did, and it's been doing great. We're still there. And I don't agree with all the particulars or, some of the theology at times. But, I'm a faithful person. What I don't do is I don't just up and move because my feelings are hurt. And I'm not saying like abuse is okay. And I'm not saying that spiritual manipulation is okay. I'm saying in my situation, no one was directly abusing me, even though there were times where my feelings were hurt. I stuck it out, and I'm glad I did. And I have deep roots there. And those are relationships I will forever have. Those are friendships I will forever have because I did not leave in a messy way. And that's still my church home. It's still my church home. And now my brother Jeff Moore's planted Rhythm Church in Oceanside. I really want to be a part of Rhythm Church in Oceanside. The funny thing is my wife actually was like, yo, we should join Rhythm. And I was like, I don't know. It's kind of a drive, And then the pandemic happened. And something about that pandemic just made me like reevaluate, like, what do I really want to be at? What do I want to pour my life into? And then I'm like, yo, we should check out Rhythm. And we went, and we're just not there yet. It's just as a family, we're not there yet. You know what I'm saying? Yes, both of our churches meet in person. Rhythm was meeting outside, which was another reason why I liked it, because it was meeting outside and younger church. I really believe in Pastor Jeff. And so I'm in this kind of like, if I'm, transparent with you guys, I'm in this kind of like in between that I've been in for a minute. I don't know what to do with all that. I don't know what to do with all that. So church hurt. Gosh, I've seen it. And that's not counting all the pastors I knew that have had scandals, all the pastors I knew that have done wild stuff. I've seen it firsthand. So as you look back on your life, where have you seen the providence of God? Oh my gosh, this is why I don't got to beef with Calvinists like that. The providence of God is everywhere. I talked about this with my stream with Dr. Flowers. Me and my family are refugees. Some of you guys know my story, some of you guys don't. Check out the Exposed series. We came out and we applied for asylum in 3 different countries. Australia, Israel, and America was the last place we applied. We just so happened to get into America as refugees in the middle of the pogroms of Baku. My family, my dad, and everybody else left. It was just me and my mom there. Long story short, I could have not came to San Diego. I could have been in Australia or in Israel right now. So there's that. I had no control over being here. I had no control over the neighborhood I grew up in, a predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood where I was like one of the few white kids. I fell in love with hip hop, fell in love with rap. Right? And that led to a career. Then my mom moved me out of my neighborhood because I was getting in trouble. I got arrested at the age of 11 for breaking into houses. My mom moved me into a different neighborhood. Subsequently got saved a couple years after that. Met my wife when I was in high school, right? And we've been together since she was 17, I was 19. So much of my life feels providential. So much of my life feels like God definitely chose me. Right? Like, and I'm not trying to say that in an arrogant way. I don't have like a big gripe with Calvinists. Even I would call myself a 3-point Calvinist. I had Dr. Flowers on. Some of the Calvinists were triggered. Shout out to you guys. But yeah, I definitely feel like God's ultimately sovereign over my life. God's ultimately in control. God, I don't feel like a robot. I'm not saying I'm a robot. Like, I definitely got choice. And there's definitely sin that stayed in my life longer than it needed to because of poor decisions I made. In the grand scheme of things, goodness great. Now, when you have kids, that's definitely when you start feeling like, whoa, this was like preordained. Because now you're thinking about children that are brought into this world. And Levi is 6, and you see his personality, and you see him being a blessing to other people. And you're like, if I went here instead of here, he wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Yeah, that's a good question, man. So shout out to all the Calvinists. I'm not mad at y'all. Some of y'all think that I don't like y'all because I'm not a 1,000-point Calvinist, or I believe humans have responsibility in choosing God or responding to God.
Ruslan.
Yes. I saw my mama smile through the silhouette. Sunshine and all. Sunshine and all. But she don't know that I still feel like we ain't made it yet. No, I ain't lying at all. I ain't lying at all. I remember walking back from grocery store.